Okay, so get this. Some of the biggest names in ancient history, we're talking heroes like Achilles and thinkers like Plato and Aristotle, they were all completely hooked on one board game. A game of pure, brutal strategy. And the craziest part? The rules are completely lost. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to play historical detective and try to piece this mystery together.
Right, so this game was called Petteia, and it wasn't just some casual pastime. It was so woven into the culture that Plato, the Plato, used it as his #1 metaphor for getting totally intellectually wrecked. You know when you're in a debate and you have no moves left? He'd say, you're cornered, just like a bad Petteia player. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about how seriously they took this game.
So the big question is, what was this game? What made it so addictive? For centuries, all we've had are little clues, tiny whispers from the past. But now, we're going to take all those fragments and see if we can rebuild this forgotten masterpiece of strategy. Let's get into it.
All right, first things first, we need to understand that this wasn't just, a game. Petteia had this almost mythic reputation. It was a game for heroes.
The absolute heart of Petteia was this. It was all about skill. Zero luck. No dice, no random chance. This was a pure contest of minds. You won because you were smarter, because you could see 3 moves ahead. In a culture like ancient Greece, which was all about logic and reason, Petteia was basically the ultimate mental battlefield.
And if you want proof of how powerful this game was, just look at the art. There's this famous scene you see over and over on ancient Greek vases. You've got Achilles and Ajax, the 2 baddest dudes in the entire Trojan War, and they're in full armor, totally lost in a game of Petteia, while a battle is literally going on around them. Can you imagine? It just shows that the game required the exact same kind of intense focus as real combat.
So how in the world do you rebuild a game when the rulebook is gone? Well, this is where it gets fun. We have to put on our detective hats and start digging for clues. And those clues are hidden in everything from the language they used to the big philosophical texts.
Just look at this timeline. It's absolutely wild. This wasn't some trend that lasted a few years. We're talking about a game that was a cultural staple for almost 1,000 years. It pops up in Homer's Odyssey way back in the 8th century BCE. Then you've got Plato and Aristotle using it as a teaching tool. And it goes all the way to Ovid, the Roman poet, who literally recommended it as a good move for, get this, impressing a date? This game had some serious legs.
Okay, and the language they used is a huge giveaway. Sometimes they called the board the polis, which means the city. And the playing pieces, they called them kinds, which means dogs. So think about that. You've got dogs hunting on a city grid. The language itself is practically screaming at us that this is a game about surrounding and trapping your opponent.
And then you've got the philosophers, who really give us the deep stuff. For Plato, it was all about being cornered, the perfect way to describe losing an argument. But Aristotle, he took it in a different direction. He looked at a single lone piece on the board and said, that's like a person without a city, without a community. It's totally alone, completely vulnerable, and about to be captured. It's such a brilliant way to show how the Greeks believed your strength came from being part of a group, part of a formation.
All right, so we've got clues from heroes, from ancient poets, from the greatest philosophers. Now it's time to put it all together. This is where we get the big breakthrough, the core mechanic that makes the whole game tick.
And that breakthrough is a concept called custodial capture. This is what makes Petteia totally different from something like chess or checkers. See, you don't capture a piece by jumping it or landing on its square. No, you capture it by surrounding it. You trap it between 2 of your own pieces, like you're taking it into custody. Hence, custodial capture.
So let's just walk through how it works. Step 1, your opponent leaves one of their pieces all by itself in a bad spot. Step 2, you slide your pieces in on either side, flanking it. And step 3, bam, that piece is trapped. It's captured and taken right off the board. It sounds simple, right? But the strategy behind it is incredibly deep. So imagine the setup. An 8x8 grid, 2 armies, and every single piece is identical. There's no queen, no special piece to bail you out. It's all about positioning. And that's why it's so much like Greek phalanx warfare in the real world. The winning strategy was the same. Stick together, keep your formation tight, support your fellow pieces, and look for a chance to flank your enemy. But the story doesn't stop with Greece, because then, the Romans show up, and being the super practical, military-minded people they were, they took this Greek game of philosophy and said, we can make this more Roman.
They called their version Ludus Latrunculorum, And that name literally translates to the game of little soldiers. I mean, the name tells you everything, right? For the Romans, this wasn't some abstract metaphor for an argument. This was a war game, a straight-up simulation of military combat.
And here's the biggest change the Romans made. They kept that cool custodial capture mechanic, but they added a special piece, the dux, or the leader. All of a sudden, the game wasn't a battle between equals anymore. It became hierarchical. Now you had a king, a general, a VIP you had to protect at all costs while trying to capture the enemies. It completely changed the strategy.
And the Roman soldiers played this thing everywhere, all across the empire. Archaeologists are still digging up game boards and pieces in the ruins of old Roman forts today. This was the strategy game for the legions. It was how they kept their tactical skills sharp even when they weren't in a real fight.
Okay, so we've got the capture mechanic, we know the history, we've seen how it evolved from the Greeks to the Romans, but it all comes down to one big, frustrating question. Can we actually play an authentic game today?
And this is the last piece of the puzzle that we just don't have. We know how to capture pieces, but we don't know for sure how they moved. Did they just shuffle one square at a time like a king in chess? Or could they zip across the entire board in a straight line like a rook? It's a huge missing detail.
This is where the debate is still raging among historians today. You've got different scholars who have proposed different reconstructions. Some think it was a slow, king-like movement, one square at a time. Others are convinced the pieces moved like rooks, flying across open lines. And think about it, that single difference creates two completely different games. One is a slow, grinding battle of inches. The other is a fast-paced game of lightning-quick attacks.
So, in the end, we might never know the single correct way to play Petteia. And you know what? That's not a failure. That's actually what makes this whole thing so cool. The game isn't a dead artifact. It's a living historical puzzle that we still get to try and solve. It's a connection to this lost world of ancient strategy. And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought, doesn't it? The Greeks had this game of pure logic between equals. The Romans turned it into a game about generals and soldiers, about hierarchy. Their games were a perfect mirror of their cultures. Which makes you wonder, what about us? What did the games we play, the games we're all obsessed with right now, say about who we are?